Savannah, founded in 1733 by British General James Oglethorpe, was laid out in a grid pattern consisting of wards or neighborhoods with potential for future expansion. It was a stroke of genius. Oglethorpe Ward, established in 1787, was the seventh. Situated on the west side of the city, it occupied what had been considered Yamacraw Indian lands. But fewer than 30 years after the founding, lots were given to planters and merchants for development. Streets were laid out, businesses developed, and houses built. By the late 19th century, most homes were humble dwellings occupied by struggling immigrants and free blacks. Made of wood, the area was a tinderbox. Fires often broke out, and many buildings were destroyed. Oglethorpe Ward was known for its squalid condition, so there was no motivation to preserve the old buildings. Reflecting on her visit in 1946, Nancy Astor, Viscountess, remarked,
"Savannah is a beautiful woman with a dirty face."
That must have hurt. So, marching toward progress, many dilapidated buildings were demolished and public housing was erected. Had they remained, perhaps they could have been renovated, maintaining the historical value of the ward, such as this row on West Taylor Street. These were built in 1852. Each apartment is only 675 square feet, having 2 beds and 1 bath, but very desirable today. Yamacraw Village, as seen in this old postcard, is run down today, housing fewer residents, units boarded up, and its future is uncertain. There are only a few remaining structures of historical significance and one beautiful garden in Oglethorpe Ward. Let's take a look. A church is the soul of its community. First Bryan Baptist Church is located in Yamacraw Village. It was designed by John B. Hogg in 1873. Hogg was a rising architect, born in South Carolina in 1826. He also designed Savannah's Trinity Methodist Church on Telfair Square. He died in 1888 and is buried in Laurel Grove Cemetery. The church was organized in 1788 by the Reverend Andrew Bryan, a slave of Jonathan Bryan of nearby Brampton Plantation. Jonathan was a very prominent colonial patriot and friend of General Oglethorpe. Andrew became a Christian as a friend of another enslaved man, George Lyle. George was a very talented preacher whose extraordinary abilities were recognized by black and white people alike. Under his influence, Andrew also became a very effective preacher. Andrew was encouraged and protected by his master, Jonathan, who bequeathed money to Andrew, enough to buy his freedom and to purchase property for a new church. Reverend Bryan died in 1812 at the age of 92 and is buried in Savannah's Whitfield Square. Yamacraw Square, directly across the street, is now Savannah's 23rd existing square. Formerly known as Yamacraw Art Park, it is home to sculptures created by local artist Jerome B. Meadows. Its creation breathes new life to this area of the city. About 2 blocks east of the church, we come to the William Scarbrough House. It was designed by William J., an English architect who lived in Savannah for 4 years, during which he designed several notable buildings. The house was built in the neoclassical style. It's made of stuccoed brick and boasts a marvelous set of Doric columns supporting a bold portico. It underwent several changes in its 200-plus years, but has been restored, more or less, to its original design. It housed a public school for African-American children from 1878 until 1962, but now houses the ships of the Sea Maritime Museum. Appropriately so. William Scarbrough was a wealthy merchant and investor in the SS Savannah, the first ocean-going steamship to cross the Atlantic. Arriving with much fanfare, President James Monroe visited Scarbrough in this home to witness that elegant steamship's launching. The Scarbrough House is resplendent in its neoclassical detail. The garden has been recreated in the style of a typical early 19th century parlor garden, incorporating plant material that is either native to the region or might have been available at the time of its first creation. Species include tightly clipped hedges of Yopon holly, which are shaded by mature crepe myrtles. Early varieties of camellias and azaleas paint the scene in their seasons. Lush perennials, ferns, and annuals blanket the understory. Modern features, some with coastal motifs, have been incorporated to meet the needs and theme of the museum. Scarbrough died in 1838 and is buried in Savannah's Colonial Park Cemetery. We return now to the boulevard to see more of Oglethorpe Ward. Strolling southward, we pass through a mixed-use commercial and residential loft district of no particular historic distinction. We find hotels, restaurants, and buildings occupied by the Savannah College of Art and Design. In fact, there are a lot of those. Many are cherished more for their nostalgic appeal, especially for those of us who have lived in or near Savannah for many years. This one with the blue trim was the original Greyhound bus terminal, built in 1938 in the Art Deco style. It brings back a lot of memories. The station, restored to its former sheen, is now occupied by an upscale restaurant, The Grey. Here's a demolition site. Let's see what they did with the empty lot. Here are some colorful elephant ears, wax leaf begonias, and a palm. Very nice. At the southern end of Oglethorpe Ward lies the Historic Railroad District. This, known as the Gray Building, was built in 1856 as a depot for the Central of Georgia Railroad. It's a fine example of antebellum Greek revival architecture. Chartered in 1833 as the Central Railroad and Canal Company, Central of Georgia Railway was extremely important in Georgia's history. Though designated as a National Historic Landmark in 1976, the Gray Building deteriorated over the years until the Savannah College of Art and Design purchased it in 1992. It's now home to the SCAD Museum of Art. Just to the south stands another Central of Georgia structure built in 1888, designed by architects Fay and Eichberg. Between the two buildings is a hidden public space. Let's explore it. Beyond the fountain, the Alex Townsend Grand Courtyard opens to a large space for relaxation and art installations, all the while maintaining the architectural integrity of the old railroad facilities. These now house galleries, meeting rooms, and space for retail shops. Tucked between the ruined walls of an old Central of Georgia train platform, we find SCAD Beach, an innovative use of space for student gatherings, social events, relaxation, and performances. Retro signage, design, and color combinations recall the 1960s. Very similar to the nearby Thunderbird Inn at the foot of the Talmadge Bridge, designed by John Knox Stacy and built in 1964. Familiarly called the Red Building, it originally housed the engineering department of the railroad. Architects Fay and Eichberg incorporated various classical components, resulting in an attractive and highly functional space for developers and draftsmen. Born in New York, Calvin Fay began his career in the South by overseeing the construction of St. John's Church on Madison Square. Fay served the Confederacy as an artillery captain and settled in Atlanta after the war. He partnered with other architects, finally working with Alfred Eichberg, also from New York. Eichberg was particularly skilled in the Romanesque Revival style, with its red brick and terracotta elements. Strolling southward along the boulevard, we approach the Savannah Visitor Center, originally built as the Central of Georgia Railroad passenger terminal. What is now the parking lot was the Cotton Freight Yard. Flanking its entrance, crenellated security posts housed armed guards to protect the precious cargo. This is one of the oldest train stations in the United States. Designed by Augustus Schwab, it was begun in 1860. Construction was interrupted during the war between the states and finished in 1876. Born in Germany in 1823, Schwab moved to Georgia in the early 1850s. His career began to blossom with his design for the Central of Georgia Gray Building. In 1865, he was the chief engineer for the railroad. The depot, constructed of Savannah gray brick, was classically inspired, featuring round arches above the windows separated by handsome pilasters. The railroad district encompasses other noteworthy sites, such as an earthworks redoubt used during the Revolutionary War, railway turntable, and shops, which we'll explore in a later video. One of the great losses to the historic Savannah landscape was the demolition of Savannah's Union Station. Designed by South Carolina architect Frank Milburn, it was completed in 1902, combining Spanish Renaissance and Elizabethan motifs. It featured a massive octagonal rotunda and two magnificent towers. It was the terminus of the Atlantic Coast Line, Seaboard Air Line, and Southern Railways. Naturally, the busy terminals along West Broad Street brought vitality to the area. But with the increasing popularity of automobiles, the railroads experienced decline. The time of their heyday was running out. The passenger depot was moved to the outskirts of town, hastening the near demise of railroad travel at Savannah. This stately landmark was demolished to make room for the interstate highway. Now, there's some conversation about removing this eyesore that has physically divided this part of the community for so long. What's to be done? When city planners' visions for progress have demolished our historic landscapes, shouldn't our landmarks be restored? Did you enjoy our tour of Oglethorpe Ward? Please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We'd love to read your comments too. For more info about this impressive area of historic Savannah, check out the description below. There's more to come. Subscribe to our channel for walks through Savannah's wards. We'll admire the beautiful buildings, enchanting gardens and squares, explore their histories, and learn about some of the fascinating people who created them.